This is the In Focus podcast from The Hindu.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the In Focus podcast. I'm your host, G. Sampath. Will Arvind Kejriwal return to power once again in Delhi? Or will the BJP build on the momentum of its recent victories in Haryana and Maharashtra to dislodge the Aam Aadmi Party from power here? What are the stakes for the Congress in these elections given that its vote share in the last election had shrunk to a measly 4.2%? These are some of the questions on everyone's minds as Delhi gears up for the assembly polls scheduled for February 5th. In this episode of In Focus, we preview the chances of the three main contenders, assess the competing narratives that each of them have been pushing, and analyze the issues that could tip the balance among the voters. We have with us Rahul Verma, political analyst and fellow at the Center for Policy Research, New Delhi. Rahul, welcome back to InFocus and thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you, Sampath, for having me again.
Great. So, Rahul, to start with, I was just wondering, your thoughts on what exactly is the public sentiment with regard to the Aam Aadmi Party as of now. I mean, Delhi has given like really overwhelming majorities to AAP in the last two assembly polls. Do you think the people are still satisfied with AAP's welfareism and service delivery mode of, functioning? Or are they now looking for something more? Is there an anti-incumbency factor that has come up? What are your thoughts?
Okay, so let's start with this idea that Delhi in last one decade has been a classic case of what political scientists call split voting, which means that a segment of voters are voting for a different party in Lok Sabha and a different party in Vidhan Sabha. So BJP in 2014, 2019, and 2024 got somewhere around 54 to 55% in Lok Sabha, but in assembly elections, their vote share came down below 40%. Uh, Whereas Aam Aadmi Party in 2015 and 2020 assembly elections got 53, 54%, but their vote shares in Lok Sabha has been lower. So there is this 15 to 20% of voters are switching parties between Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha. So the key question this time in 2025 is going to be whether it follows the old pattern or there is going to be a change in this. Uh, I've seen a couple of sort of like tracker polls or pre-poll surveys, and there seems to be a divided opinion on the question that you have asked. There is 35 to 42% of voters who seem to be happy with the performance of Aam Aadmi Party. And then there is a similar number, 35 to 40% of voters who are unhappy. In some cases, a large portion of them would actually want the government to be changed. And then you have middling 20 to 25% who did not express serious opinion, or they might be happy, but they still want the government to be changed, or they might be angry but not want the government to be changed. So I think this is what the distribution seems to be like in pre-poll surveys. There are some segments who are happy, and my guess is that largely the segment which is happy is coming from like the poor and lower middle class, mostly who are recipient of the welfare benefits and service delivery you are talking about. And the group that seems to be unhappy is largely sort of like middle class or upper middle class, who benefit a part of these services, for example subsidized electricity bill in perhaps during winters, but they might have been expressing displeasure, especially over not much improvement in sort of like infrastructure, roads, and other things in last 5 years, and then there are corruption allegations and other kind of things. So I think that's what the distribution looks like, and it's likely, like after 10 years of being in power and being in power with the kind of majority that Aam Aadmi Party had, with not much to sort of like campaign on the development front in the second term. Most of the schemes or welfare benefits that Aam Aadmi Party is trying to sort of like campaign on, or were mostly started during the first term, like whether you talk about mohalla clinics or electricity subsidies or water subsidies. Most of them actually got created in the first one. The second term didn't see any new big sort of like political move from the Aam Aadmi Party, and party was sort of like embroiled in many controversies, corruption allegations, and other things. So AP to me seemed to be sort of like was on back foot in that sense in the run up to this election.
Great. Thank you for that overview, Rahul. I was just wondering, so when you say that there hasn't been any developmental work and most of these welfare-oriented moves from the Aam Aadmi Party, have been there from the first term and so on, there is an alternative perspective on this, which says that, for their voters and specifically in Delhi, a party which is delivering on these promises of welfare is actually a big deal, because the other parties make the promises but the promises don't get delivered. So in that sense, there is a differentiating factor with the Aam Aadmi Party, because they're actually giving something where the others don't give, they only promise. Do you think that narrative has any kind of resonance at all, or is that just something minor?
So one clarification: when I said like no development, that doesn't mean nothing happened, but compared to the first term, AAP doesn't have many things to claim on. And second, of Aam Aadmi Party, of course, like if you compare political parties, AAP is welfareist. And in that sense, like after the Maharashtra election results, I had written, which is that if BJP is going to sort of like read from Haryana and Maharashtra victory that they only won because of welfare promises or sort of like schemes that they had implemented in the run up to assembly elections, then they will face a serious challenge in their attempt to win Delhi, because now that you are going to one face the election as an opposition rather than as incumbent in Haryana and Maharashtra, and two, you are going to face the election against a party which claims to be welfareist and had delivered on some of those promises. So BJP needs to, for its own sake, needs to figure out what were the other factors that helped them win in Haryana and Maharashtra. And what you rightly pointed out, AAP has a very solid base among sort of like the lower middle class and poor voters of Delhi, and that gives them a serious advantage even in this election. Though I would like to underline that the kind of victories that BJP had in Lok Sabha elections in Delhi or AAP had in Vidhan Sabha elections in Delhi means that they had a broader support. You don't win 55, 56% of the votes without having any support from other groups. So AAP gets sort of like two-thirds vote from lower segments in assembly election, but it also gets one-third to half of up middle class, upper middle class votes as well.
Right. So, Rahul, when you just now spoke about this survey, wherein you had said that about 35 to 40% were satisfied with the Aam Aadmi Party, and another 35 to 40% were dissatisfied. You also, went on to sort of throw some light on this composition of these segments, where the lower middle class were more satisfied and the better off sections were less satisfied. And in this context, I was just wondering, you spoke about split voting and about how 15 to 20% tends to switch, vote for the BJP slash Modi for the Lok Sabha and Aam Aadmi Party at the assembly level. Is there a similar kind of a caste, class, or whatever community or class composition split with these 15 to 20%? Who are these split voters? Is it safe to assume, for instance, that in the lower middle class, the Juggi Jompdi residents, for instance, vote for the Aam Aadmi Party at both levels? They are not perhaps the split voters. The split voters are basically the upper middle class and the middle class who probably prefer the BJP for the Lok Sabha and Aam Aadmi Party for the Vidhan Sabha. But now perhaps they might actually be wanting to vote for the BJP given the anti-incumbency factor you outlined. Would that be a fair kind of a speculation to make?
Sampath, that's a harder question to answer. The reason it's a harder question to answer because we don't have panel surveys. If we had panel surveys are basically when you are interviewing same voters across different election cycles, then you could sort of like make that calculations a little bit more precise. But looking at cross section surveys, I think what happened between 2014 and 2024 is, in the first round between 2014 and 2015, the switch was largely among the poorer segments. Whereas the switch in 2019 and 2020 was much more among the middle class segments. And that makes things a bit more complicated. I think there are two ways of thinking about it. If you think that it's the poor and middle class voters are switching vote, then the argument is going to be because they are benefiting from some schemes from the state government and some schemes from the central government, and so they are choosing basically very instrumentally in different kind of elections who they vote for. But if middle class is switching, and especially between 2019 and 2020, I think middle class in some ways might have found the AP's sort of like governance track record between 2015 and 2020 good enough. But if that like and if the sort of like dissatisfaction or anger is building among that segment for AP's governance track record between 20 to 25, then AP has the problem among the middle class voters. And I think AP has a sense and a realization. That's why you saw Arvind Kejriwal. So first, the focus was largely on poor. They were making new announcement about schemes, women, and other kind of things. And I think yesterday or day before yesterday, like Arvind Kejriwal in a sort of like a rally or in a meeting, put forward seven demands focusing on middle class. I think AP realizes that this segment shouldn't go against them, because earlier in 2013 and 2015, they received a serious support from middle class. They were seen as a party which came out of anti-corruption movement, and they were fighting for some of those causes. So middle class support in its initial years was important. Over a period, I think they basically became a party which catered to the lower middle class and poorer segment. And so in his seven demands that to the central government, that we need to increase health and education budget. We need to sort of like put a cap on private school fees, increase the limit on income tax, and those kind of things are directly being catered to the middle class.
Right, right. Yeah, it's a very tricky situation, and as you said, I mean, unless we have the right kind of data to compare across time, it might be a little premature to draw conclusions. Now, Rahul, most people consider this election as a two-way contest between Aam Aadmi Party and the BJP, and the Congress. Nobody really looks at it as likely to form the government at any rate. So it's relegated to the role of maybe a vote cutter or a spoiler, or so to speak. So, to what extent do you think the Congress can damage the chances for Aam Aadmi Party? Because everybody seems to agree that if the Congress does well, the loser would be the Aam Aadmi Party, not the BJP at any rate, because that is how the votes get transferred. Do you think that's likely to happen? And if yes, to what extent do you think the Congress could make inroads and maybe affect the final tally of the Aam Aadmi Party?
So you're right. Congress got just 5% vote, but we also saw at least like the Congress state president, Mr. Devendra Yadav. I think he has been very active in last 4 5 months, campaigning, trying to mobilize the troops and trying to create an organizational machinery in the state. So there is expectation of Congress making gains. Now, what we don't know at this moment is what the quantum of that gains are going to be. And then there is a segment of sort of like chatter that AP, like some voters are unhappy, especially Muslim voters are unhappy with AP not coming out in sort of like full support during the 2020 Delhi riots, and also during the CA and RC protest, whereas Congress was much more willing to come out on those kind of things. And so there might be a switch among Muslim voters in favor of the Congress. I think even if that happens, like the scale or quantum of that is going to be very, very low. Uh,
Last time Congress had 4.32%. So what percentage? We don't know how much it's going to go up if it goes up, but what is the bare minimum it needs to go up for the up to be in trouble?
I think I would say more than 5 percentage point. In 2015, Congress had 9 to 10% vote share, but BJP's vote share at that time was just 32%. BJP's vote share in 2020 was 38% and Congress was 4%. So if you add, it was both around 42%, right? So, combined. Now, if Congress gains 4 to 5% from AAP and BJP also gains 4 to 5% from AP, then AP will basically come below 43, 44%, and BJP will be above that. And then I think the seat conversion would be in favor of BJP. But like AP is going to be in serious trouble only and only if AP loses both to some votes to Congress and some vote to BJP. Only Congress picking up some Muslim votes is not going to do big damage to the AP. Remember, they are at 54% vote share and 62 seats. So for them, if AP sort of like loses 6 to 7% votes at minimum, and both go like all goes to BJP, even then the AP would be in sort of like a very tight race. Anything could have happened. But if AP loses around 10% vote and some goes to Congress, some goes to BJP, then AP is in definite trouble.
Right. Now, coming to the big factor in the elections, Rahul, which is everybody says it is Kejriwal at the center of it. I mean, no other party has a comparable phase, in terms of leadership, neither the Congress nor the BJP. So, I was just wondering, do you think he still has the kind of charisma that he had, say 5 6 years ago, or with all this jail term and charges of sheesh mahal, 80 crores kind of being spent on his residence, the liquor policy allegations, all those things, do you think they have done damage, or do you think he still has the same kind of support he always had, because he resigned from the chief ministership, to sort of take the moral high ground? How do you think people view him today? Do you think he still has that X factor that has made him successful for so many years?
No, I think the opinion on this is divided, right? He may have lost some sheen or some sort of like uh, charismatic appeal that he had between 2015 and 2020, but I think he still remains very, very popular in Delhi. And the divided opinion is basically the loyal supporters of AP still think he's great. They would say that, the corruption allegations and everything is BJP's ploy to malign him. They would say that he wants to do really good work for everyone, but BJP has been playing or creating obstacles for him and his government through the office of lieutenant government. But on the other hand, you would see like core BJP or Congress supporters who think that now Arvind Kejriwal is exposed, right? Like he tried to become, or he acted as messiah of anti-corruption and everything in his earlier avatar. But look at what he's doing in last few years. He's got Sheesh Mahal and he is involved in corruption on liquor and other things. So I think for the way I would read it, he still remains the top choice for AAP supporters, which is roughly 40 to 45% at minimum. But those who are opposed to AP or are in favor of Congress and BJP, among them, I think like now they have more things to sort of like say against Kejriwal, which they would not have had between 2015 and 2020.
Right. Now, coming to some of the specifics in terms of candidates selection and choice, Rahul, I was just wondering how do you read if you take two key constituencies, where the main guys are contesting. New Delhi, where Kejriwal is contesting, and Kalkaji, where the current Chief Minister Atishi is competing from there. And the BJP, if you look at their choice of candidates, I mean, they've got like two people with like really high voltage communal branding around them. And if you go by the kinds of remarks they've made all over, and the kinds of stuff they have been in the news for, Parvesh Verma from New Delhi, and I think Ramesh Biduri is going to go up against Atishi. What does that say? Is it like the BJP looking to crank up the communal plank, so to speak, because they don't have anything else to go with, other than because they have been out of power for so long. Do you think that's the idea in terms of going with these kinds of candidates to sort of
Uh,
compete with?
Again, this is a hard question for me to answer, but let me sort of reflect. I think, see, both Pravesh Verma and Ramesh Biduri have been former MPs, and you rightly indicated that they have used high pitch sort of like communal rhetorics in the past, and may have been sort of like said few things even during this campaign. Both of them were not included in 2024 election as candidates, and so they are being accommodated now as sort of like MLA candidates in this election. And I think the strategy seems to be basically tying both Kejriwal and Atishi to their respective seats and make them sweat a little bit. Uh, but frankly, the kind I think BJP, after winning Maharashtra, and Kejriwal being slightly defensive in the months of November and December, uh, I think once the sort of like that phase was over, between 15th of December and 15th of January, I think BJP didn't do enough for them to be basically in a very sort of like favorable position. They may still sort of like put up in a difficult position, or even may win election, who knows. But BJP didn't do anything different. They needed to do something different in this election in Delhi. And why I'm saying this, because Delhi has been a very difficult state for BJP as far as assembly elections are concerned. They have been out of power, as you rightly suggested, for 25 to 27 years, right? Three times Shira Dikshit defeated them, and then two times Arvind Kejriwal in 15 and 20 and 2013 election. While they were on the top, they didn't have the majority. And so, in that sense, BJP has two kinds of problems, I think, in Delhi. One, I think they don't, as you pointed out, they don't have sort of like a leadership phase to be able to match to Arvind Kejriwal. Along with that, I think their sort of like organizational machinery is also bit rusted compared to AAP in Delhi, and I'm just talking about Delhi in that sense. There is much more factionalism and other kind of things. Two, I think BJP wants to balance very different kinds of interest here. Sectional interest, if you want to think of it, like the middle class, the sort of like the rural outer Delhi areas,
How,
Jats and
how are
Gujjar
they playing the
population.
whole caste and no community dynamics here? Are they backing the Jats and the Gujars? Are they giving more play to the Brahmin
So I
community?
think they are trying to do that, right? Which is like you will see a lot of leaders from Haryana BJP being deployed in outer Delhi, sort of like assembly constituencies to mobilize those kind of voters. You have heard that there are leaders from Uttarakhand and Himachal and Delhi, UP and Bihar being deployed in the eastern Delhi constituency. So they are like bringing in leaders to campaign. But BJP itself has not been able to create a narrative in Delhi that why do they need it to be voted to power. Like they have lots of negative and attack campaign on AP. What has AP not done? What has AP not delivered? AP has been charged of corruption and other kind of things. But other than freebies where they are trying to match AAP. They haven't offered a sort of like a governance, sort of like vision, what they will
But
do
neither
when
has
they
the
come
Aam
to.
Aadmi neither has the Aam Aadmi Party offered a narrative. Rahul, do you think the AAP has come out with any kind of a narrative in this campaign?
But in sense, AP, like, it is a party of governance. Like, it's the party. When I'm saying it is a party of governance, this AP is in power, and AP's sort of like core base or their main thing is to keep the poor and lower middle class with them. And with the kind of announcement they have made and delivered, that should be good enough for them to be competitive. BJP has to enthuse its middle class voters. And for that, they needed to offer a little bit more on what they will do when they come to power in terms of infrastructure and other kind of thing. And why I'm saying this is also because, like, and to a previous question, why I think the switch was among middle class in 2020 is between 2015 and 2020, the turnout declined by 5 percentage points. And the turnout decline was much more in what you will call as middle class dominated constituencies. And so BJP needed this kind of plan to enthuse its middle class voters to come out and vote for them to become competitive.
Right. Now, this one big, I mean, if there is one issue, I think, which has really made some inroads in the campaign side, it is the whole Jugi Jompri residents' concerns, about slum rehabilitation. They've had a series of demolitions, the different Jugi Jompri clusters over the last several years. And the Aam Aadmi Party has been going around telling them that if the BJP comes to power, your guys are going to have more demolitions coming your way. So, do you think, like, I think they comprise about, what, 15 lakhs? I'm not sure about the exact numbers out of Delhi population. So, to what extent do you think they are going to be the determining factor? Their sense of safety and fear about their residences being demolished, and of course, plus other benefits also which they've been receiving from the government. So, do you think how do you think that's going to play out? Do you think they're going to largely stick to the Aam Aadmi Party, or are they going to be expressing their discontent in some ways?
So, JJ clusters and their rehabilitation and demolition is always a story in the election. There are roughly some like 15 to 1700 JJ clusters in Delhi, and according to different estimates, they would be around 10 to 15% of the voters. What we also know that these sort of like Jhuggi Jhopdis will also have, like, of course they are poor, but they will also are more likely to have Muslims and Dalits as like from caste community angle, that kind of configuration. And so these segments in both 2015 and especially in 2020 overwhelmingly voted for the AAP, and so AP would like to keep its core with them. BJP have had a difficult time in getting a lot of votes from these sort of like clusters. And so AP's game plan in that sense would be to continue receiving three-fourths of the vote from these clusters, which was their mainstay, and then added to the lower middle class localities. These two segments should be good enough for them to keep competitive if they can get some additional votes from middle class localities. So, one, there is always, like, during elections, this issue comes up. They are a significant chunk of the population, but they're also spread out, right? There are some constituencies where the JJ cluster composition would be 5 to 10%. There are also constituencies where JJ cluster would be 30 to 40%. And so, in some cases, they can alone impact the electoral outcome. In other cases, they won't have that kind of significant effect.
Right. One last question, Rahul, before we wrap up. Now, the Aam Aadmi Party, I think, is the only regional party which is in power in two states. Is that right? I mean, if that being the case, what do you think would a victory for the Aam Aadmi Party mean for the party, and also what would a defeat mean for the party and for Arvind Kejriwal going forward? Also, a second question to this: Do you think a simple majority, say out of 70, if they get 40 or 45, would that be even adequate for them to survive for 5 years? Because it's a very sad question to ask. But do you think there is something like a safe figure, safe margin? Maybe they should get at least 59, 60 to be safe, even though 36 is the halfway mark. Just these
No,
two
I
questions
think
I
like
wanted.
if they have more than 40 to 45, I think that should be good enough. Like in normal circumstances, like if you are above the majority mark, then to break above the majority mark by some margin, meaning like, in this case, I would say 45, it would be difficult to break the party. I think uh, if AAP survived in the kind of onslaught that it went through in last 5 years, and they have all stuck together. I think largely stuck together. I think that number would be safe to be in power. But of course, if the other side, which just had now 5 MLAs or 7 MLAs, if it becomes a 25 or 30 MLA party, even BJP, if sitting in opposition, I think the political climate of Delhi is going to be very different, right? But for AP to come back to power for the third time would be a big achievement. And even if they suffer some losses. So, yes, Delhi with Srila Dikshit had 3 terms, but AP coming back to power for the third term would be very, very important, because in some ways it would be a morale booster that even after all the troubles that were created for them, and the kind of allegations that have been leveled against AP leaders. There have been several leaders who have walked out of AP for a variety of reasons. Despite of that, if they manage to win, that AP is going to read it as sort of like affirmative from Delhi voters. However, if they lose the election, then it would be a serious setback. And why I'm saying a serious setback? Because one, Delhi, of course, is the state where they started from. Uh, Punjab, of course, is many years down the line in 2027. But if AAP loses Delhi, then it would become really, really hard for them to sort of like keep Punjab. So it will create serious
Is,
challenges.
is is keeping Punjab the only challenge, or will it be a challenge even to remain as one party? Are they like
Yes,
it's
exactly,
likely to?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So both these things would happen, but some of these things would happen between Delhi elections and Punjab, and some would happen after Punjab. Like there are a lot of things in between. So for AAP, this election is much more important than I would say for BJP. If BJP wins, I think there will be overjoys. But even if they lose, at least from the national politics perspective, it wouldn't do any great damage to their prospects going forward.
Right. I think there's no doubt that the stakes are the highest for the Aam Aadmi Party, and they would really be going all out to secure this victory. And I think for the BJP, it would be, of course, a tremendous. It will be like an icing on the cake, a hat trick of sorts. And for the Congress, it will be. I think they'll be looking to see whether they can revive their fortunes at all, or if Delhi is something. It's a long road back. Thank you so much, Rahul. It was really fascinating to listen to you share your thoughts and insights on this election, which we will know, of course, the results on February 8th. The voting is on February 5th, about 2 weeks away. I think it'll be interesting 2 weeks to wait and watch and observe how things unfold. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much, Sampath, for having me. Thank you.
In Focus will be back soon with analysis of the biggest news issues. In the meantime, you can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and other platforms. Just search for In Focus by The Hindu. We'll see you soon.